Okay, thank you much. Bye. Yep, we're on.
Okay. I'll open it up. Welcome everyone to the inaugural Public Transportation Advisory Committee. Today is September 11th, at 7 p.m. and the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next item on the agenda, we need a chair and vice chair. So, who wants to be chair? Nose goes?
Nose goes.
Anyone?
What does the chair do?
Right now it's pretty blank canvas, but it's just, some official communications, if we were communicating outside bodies, we'd go through you, then we can bring to the board, or I would be working with you more closely, like agenda, creating the agendas and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, right now it's not that much responsibility.
It makes sense for somebody with, experience to be the chair. I'd imagine.
All right, I'll volunteer.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think it would be better if it were one of the two of you, because I'm a town council appointee and I could be gone next year.
I don't mind doing it for the winter, but once we get
Okay.
I'll be, I run the food pantry gardens, I'll be very busy.
So how about this? We'll start with you, Sunka.
Okay.
Okay, and then we revisit in March.
Sure.
And we can just redo, we can, vote on it again.
Yeah. That sounds
Does
good.
that sound good for everyone? So,
6-month terms.
yeah, why not?
Could
Make
be
it what we want.
Might
So,
be more palatable.
yeah, right.
That's
So-
right.
All right. So, is there a motion to nominate Sunka Darnblue as chair of the Transportation Committee?
I move to nominate Sanka
I'll
as
second.
chair.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. I
You're welcome.
appreciate that.
All right, and now we need a vice chair.
I'll be vice chair.
Okay. Great. So we'll make a vote motion.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Here we are. So actually we do introductions. So
Yes. I
yeah,
think
I'll
that's-
start. My name is Bart McDonough. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development. And I'm really interested, I'm just going to say why I am really excited about this committee. I'm excited about this committee because I think it's going to have a lot of opportunities to really improve the town. I think in general transportation is one of the major factors of our community, or element, and I think we have a great opportunity to really improve upon it. And I think we have, based on this board's composition, our committee's composition, staff, and then our support that we have through the Planning Commission, I think we can generate some really good ideas and good projects and really guide the conversation on transportation and improvements there too. So, I don't know, I just think it's just something new, for me at least. I've never really been on a transportation committee, but I see it every day. All of us do, I guess, but I don't know, I'm just optimistic, I guess, about it. So that's how I feel. So pass it to Sunka.
Thank you. My name is Sönke Dornblut. I'm current member of the town council in here in this town. This is kind of a weird place to sit, because usually I sit over there, and this is a very different vantage point. It just changes the room totally. I'm really excited about having a committee in town that focuses on transportation as well. It's topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I do think that it's one of those. It'll be nice to have a place where things come together around transportation, so that we can be a little bit more coordinated and understand what kind of resources we have in town already, and market those and see where there are gaps and opportunities for us to improve, and bring those suggestions for improvements to the town council and get them worked on. I think that's really fantastic. So I look forward to doing this work with you all.
Thanks. My name's Austin. I live here in Newmarket, and I guess I really kind of like transportation. I grew up in Massachusetts. I spent some time down in Charlotte, and I've spent some time out with my sister who lives in Brooklyn. I've seen a couple different, methods of planning cities, and especially the way they treat their transportation. And I don't know. I moved to Newmarket specifically, because I was looking for somewhere with, walkability. And my house is, within walking distance downtown, and a bunch of houses are. It has good density and a really nice downtown, parks and stuff. I think, if we can improve on it and make it even better, it'll be an even better place to live. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm Madeline Faust. I'm also a resident of Newmarket. I'd like to echo what Bart said. I think that transportation is central to this town. It's a very walkable town. Another reason we also chose this town for one of those reasons. Since I've become involved in this committee, I mention it to people, and people have a lot to say about transportation and parking and walkability and pedestrian traffic and the interaction of pedestrian and bicycle traffic and vehicular traffic. And I think this is a great town, and it's going to go great places. I'm just excited to be on this committee.
I'm Mike Hoffman, 28 years as a firefighter. In that career, I saw a lot of death, injury, whatever, heartache on the roads, and oftentimes we sit around an accident scene and say, wow, this could have been prevented. After that, I was a code enforcement officer here in Newmarket for 8 years. I've been involved in planning board, so we've talked a lot about traffic and traffic flow and safety. And the other piece of it is just economic development and building community. When we talk about a walkable town, we talk about, that's when we talk to our neighbors and we have communication. So a sense of community. People driving by in their car don't spend money. People walking by, grab a cup of coffee, talk to their neighbors. So I'm all about making downtown more walkable, more viable, or not vibrant. And it's always been an interest of mine. I dropped out of engineering because it's way too hard. Gave me a headache. It's all yours now.
Okay, on that note, I am Lindsay Butler. I am the town engineer. I am excited to see where this committee can take transportation in Newmarket. I think there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of opportunity, and it's a great time for this committee to get involved in kind of shaping how Newmarket shifts and evolves in the coming years. And I'm excited to be a part of the committee and how that goes.
Great.
Super. Thank you very much, Lindsay, and everybody else for sharing why you're excited about this committee. And regular business, that's our next agenda item. So I'm not quite sure, because I didn't make the agenda.
Yeah, sure.
So if you don't mind, Bart, continue
No
leading the
problem,
way,
yeah,
I would
yeah.
appreciate it.
I would happy to do that. So I'll just give a run through A through D, just so you understand what this is. So our road program plan overview and current status. So it's basically right now what the municipal level, what we're doing. We have a schedule, a road schedule, so our road maintenance program. So Lindsay's going to talk about that, kind of a brief overview of what that is, and then where we are right now with that, and where we like potentially to go. After that, it's kind of similar vein, our infrastructure update. You know, there's more of like, in this case, like sidewalks, you know, where we move forward with that. So, you know, A and B are kind of tied together in a way, but just a little different there, a little nuance. And then C is going to talk about the master plan chapter, the transportation. We're going to do a little introduction to that, do an update on where we are, and then kind of, this will just kind of tell you right now, this will be the team developing that chapter. Now, I'll give an overview of the structure that we have in developing the master plan. But we'll get into that, and then we might move C and D around so Colin can get out of here. And then D is the parking study. So we are going to do a parking study, and we're going to introduce that to you, and then what volunteer needs that we have, and kind of understand where we're going there, and what the ultimate outcomes we're looking for. So with that, I will pass it on to Lindsay to kind of talk about A and B, so our road program and infrastructure programs, and just give just a general introduction, what they are, and then, you know, what they are currently doing and where we want to go.
Yeah, okay. So, excuse me. So for the road program, the road plan, it's kind of, I guess the best way to describe it is a roadway management plan. It's a plan that projects out 10 years. From last year, we completed an assessment in fall of 2022. SRPC has assisted us with that. So that was an assessment, condition assessment of all of the roadways in town, driving and evaluating cracks, frost heaves, other issues, general pavement surface condition, and taking all of that data from the drive-through and the and the assessment, and giving it a score, which is called a Pavement Condition Index (PCI) score. So all the roadways in town were scored, and you can see the ones with the lowest scores are oldest, typically, or in most need of repair or replacements. So we now have all the town roads scored, and it kind of also ranks them based on scoring. On the newest ones are in the greatest condition, older ones or trouble areas are kind of in the worst condition. So we know where to tackle first. So we take those scores and then develop a 10-year plan to rehab, rehabilitate, or resurface, reconstruct those roadways. This is primarily driven by DPW Highway Department and myself, and we worked with SRPC staff to go through that priority ranking, and we have identified which roads, we go like by length, we kind of decide which ones need to be tackled with which different approach, rehabilitated or completely reconstructed, and we kind of fit them into determining our budget and kind of play that out over the next 10 years. So we have established that was finished, and we have a report I can circulate to the committee. Probably good for everyone to just have a general understanding of where we're at. We have flexibility to adjust roadways, and one of the things that we are going to try to do more going forward is, now that we have our roadway management program for the next 10 years, and we are developing some infrastructure asset management programs for the utilities that are under those roadways. I'd like to overlay those so that we can identify before we're going to pave a road if there's utilities underneath that would be coming up in the next 5 years or so to be replaced. We can kind of coordinate that stuff better to be a more efficient, effective project. the roadway management plan. And it's also, we have, like I say, we have the flexibility to change it with like utilities. There are also other things that may come up, and if there's discussion among this committee in making adjustments to what we've laid out over the next 10 years, we can certainly do that. And likely in 10 or so years, we will revisit this plan. It's something that we should be doing every 5 to 10 years, reevaluating the pavement condition and rescoring all the roadways, and then making adjustments as we go forward to those projections to maintain road surfaces in a good working condition as best we can. And then the infrastructure program along similar lines. This is kind of more specific to sidewalk and not necessarily get into like bike lanes or other roadway infrastructure elements, but
Is that, by what decision is that? Is it,
It's primarily just that there was a sidewalk expansion study done in 2019 with Underwood Engineering. I'm not sure what prompted that because I wasn't here at the time. But, so they looked just at sidewalks. I don't think, I think at the time there wasn't necessarily a push to expand that scope into other, evaluating other connectivity or transportation aspects. So, we're currently working off of that plan, and that plan for sidewalk expansion, from what I understand, looked at where sidewalks could be connected, filling in gaps in sidewalk connectivity, and then also where people tend to be walking along the side of the road a lot and could benefit from adding sidewalks. So currently, you may see that DPW has been working on installing some sidewalk on
Grant Road.
Street, and South Main Street and Grant Road, but let's stick
South
with
Main Street.
And that was, those two segments were identified as part of that study. And there are other segments, off the top of my head, I remember that Piscassic and Salmon Street are some that are kind of coming up in the next couple of years. So, like the road program, but on a much smaller scale. And something that we probably will want to update and expand to consider other facilities or maybe other elements of networking to that. So I think just kind of current status on the sidewalk expansion. Roughly half of the road segments that were recommended in the 2019 study have, the sidewalks there have been installed. So there's, I want to say there's 5 more roadway segments. And DPW is projecting out over the next 3 to 5 years to get those installed.
when you, this is just a, so let's say the road has a sidewalk alongside it, and you would be reviewing the condition of the roadway. Would the sidewalk be included in that review, or would that be a separate
That's a good question.
undertaking?
It does not get included in the standard assessments of road surface condition assessments and PCI scores, because it's outside it's more focused on the travelway and shoulders, and not necessarily getting into the sidewalks. And I don't know if it's just because of the technology and how they do it, but there is certainly opportunity to evaluate and assess the condition of the sidewalks by other means, and that could maybe be something that's incorporated into a future road surface condition assessment, or could be done somewhat separately or tangentially.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Any questions?
No, just one comment. As we see our downtown get busier and busier, we're seeing more pedestrians in the travel lane where there aren't sidewalks, and it's becoming more important than it was even 5 years ago that we provide for pedestrian traffic flow, especially in those broken links where the sidewalk just ends and then it's broken and then it starts again.
Right.
And people just walking the road, and we way too chronic in my mind, because a lot of times they have their back to traffic, and that drives me kind of nutty. I feel like pulling over and telling them that they're being crazy, but I haven't quite got to that point.
We're wearing gray
Yeah.
at dusk.
Yeah.
I wonder, it might be an opportunity to identify those locations, we start collecting that data, you know, just so we have that as we move forward with, filling in network gaps.
Right.
And, so there's a bunch of different data sets we can probably collect to really prioritize, certain segments. So, yeah, that's a good point.
That would be data that would be on that study, on the sidewalk study.
Probably not so much on the current study, and I don't know how involved, there wasn't a transportation committee when that study was done previously, so I don't know how much community involvement or input there was in identifying those areas, but certainly in the next iteration, this committee would be critical.
Yeah, my recollection is there weren't actual counts done on pedestrian flow, where we can do counts on vehicle flow very easily. No, we didn't very often do. But we just can recognize, we keep seeing a problem and recognize it, especially the North Main Street and Grand Road piece. It was just recognized by a lot of people saying, hey, this is a problem. But there wasn't much data there. It was just, people saying, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Is it common for a roadway to focus only on the vehicular travel lanes if there are sidewalks, or would it be more common to understand roadway to include sidewalks as well, where they're present?
This might be great. We've got kind of an expert in the field right here.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Colin Lentz. I work with the Stratford Regional Planning Commission and communicate with Department all the time. In my experience, the emphasis is on the vehicular traffic. But there are ways you can design the road, narrowing being one of them, to make those sidewalks more comfortable and useful. I always hesitate to say that the sidewalks are not an afterthought, but sidewalks are not always comfortable or safe to walk on, I think, in my experience, if you're walking past cars that are going 50. It's noisy, stinky, etc. It's probably going to deter people unless they're really confident and they'll care about the noise from using that. So that's just my experience. Sidewalks are great. You're going to run into people riding bikes on them. Because personally, I'm not going to ride my bike on a road where cars are going 50 if I can help it. I did a bike to work, event thing back in, forget what month, but earlier this year, and I had my 3-year-old on my bike. I'm not riding in traffic with a 3-year-old, so that was a sobering experiment that sidewalks are not meant for bicycles, but the road is not either. Before I get off on a tangent, you can build sidewalks better, aka wider, with a buffer between the cars. It just gets expensive.
Yeah, I was just wondering if when we think of road, when I think of road, or let's say it is Main Street. When I think of the roadway, I think of the entire thing, including the sidewalks, not just the travel lanes. So I think I would encourage us to think of that terminology to be more inclusive of all types of modes that we encounter, whether it's bicyclists or pedestrians or vehicular traffic, just so that we take away the kind of the specialness of the sidewalk and make that more part of the this is a necessity in order to ensure safety and connectivity for all people who live in town.
And I think that's the emphasis of the master plan scope. It's an update to the chapter, not a comprehensive, full, soup to nuts reboot, but the multimodal focus was emphasized in that scope. The pedestrian network, kind of developing that, maybe going off the study. We do have pedestrian counters that we can use. They're fairly limited in where they can be deployed. We can't just plop them on a utility pole next to the road where there's a goat path and obvious anecdotal evidence, because it will count the road or the cars going by. It's sort of it's like a motion infrared detector kind of thing. It can't be on a busy sidewalk where doors are opening or people are standing around. So we've used them on the pedestrian bridge in Durham where there are only pedestrians going by, or the entrance to a building where there are only people going by and not milling around. So those can be brought to bear if there are locations that would work for that. Just a side note. Just as I'm going along with the master plan, happy to talk. Oh yeah.
I don't know if everyone really knows you. Maybe
Oh sure.
a slight introduction.
Yeah, more of an introduction. Sorry about that.
Good idea.
So yeah, I work with Stratford Regional Planning Commission. I've been there over 10 years now. I run our transportation program. So Newmarket is a member. We have the transportation program, economic development, and then general regional planning assistance. So you all have Bart and Lindsay, but we have circuit riders that work with towns like Nottingham, Wakefield, the smaller ones that don't have a paid planner on staff to attend. Select board members provide advice when site plan review comes up or things get snarled up. So on the transportation side, at the very least, I'm your liaison to DOT. I've been around long enough that I know who to call if there's a question to come up. Arguably my other role is developing our long-range transportation plan, and the biggest part of that is plugging in future projects so that they're funding ready. I'm not an engineer, but I hire engineers, and I always like to work with towns that have engineers, to develop potential projects and get a scope and a cost estimate and potential designs, so that if funding comes up, we can say, hey, we have this project and these 4 other ones, let's get applications together. So that is what we did for the 108 and 152 intersection, just down here a little ways, in thinking about how to improve that intersection and for pedestrian safety, vehicles, etc. So I can talk more about that. Any other questions about me or SRPC? Kind of where I fit into this? All right. Where's it going?
You can say something.
Should we just stick to the
Yep.
agenda? And
Yeah.
Yep, so just master plan chapter.
Okay.
Yeah,
Master plan.
yeah, let's talk about that.
Yep. So obviously a bunch of data in there that we can update, traffic vehicle counts. We have a new tool at our disposal called that uses TomTom data. So we don't have to actually go and set the rubber tubes across the road to get an idea of counts. It just uses cell phones and smart vehicles and pings them if they're on the TomTom system, which is related to Google. So decent traffic counts, and what it can do that we can't do with the rubber tube counts is get origins and destinations. So we can look at the downtown and see where people are coming from north and south and where they're going within a 50-mile radius. So that sort of gets at some other things like economic development and future development patterns and so forth. And there was a piece in the scope about a complete streets policy. So I'm happy to be, help part of that. I think I need to double check, but I think Dover is the only other community in the region that has a specific, this is our complete streets policy. So it'd be cool for Newmarket to take a stab at one of those two. That's the gist of the master plan, the super nutshell version. We have the event on Saturday morning coming up, where I'm going to be there with my colleague Mark, with a table. We're going to keep it pretty simple with some maps and ask people about their concerns, whether it's safety, where they would like to ride their bike or walk if they could, if they felt safe, you know, important destinations like that. Kind of open discussion, really.
I'm sure we can do, but what time is that, that event? So just for people who are watching at home who might.
9 to 12.
9 to 12.
9 to 12. And where is it?
It's at the junior, senior high school.
Ah, it's at the high school.
Yeah. Free coffee and breakfast.
Good place to show up.
That's
on
right,
Saturday.
yeah. Good folk too, good people.
Yes, before you go on your bike ride.
That's right.
So any other questions on the master plan? I'm honestly just kind of getting into it at this point. The emphasis has been on the housing side of things. So this is kind of my inaugural foot through the door on that.
Yeah.
Just one question. Have you worked with a committee like this in order to do a master plan update? And
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Most recently, Barrington, we did a transportation master plan update for them. So I worked directly with a small steering committee about this size, and several meetings. We bounce ideas off each other, and I draft some language, you know, take your input and see what we can do.
Okay.
So I'll step in for a second. So the way really the structure and the update structure works is the planning board is the ultimate, you know, ratifier of the master plan. So there's a subcommittee below that that kind of will recommend these changes, draft chapters to the planning board, and below them there's teams that help actually do the first drafts. So this is, you know, housing, you know, was like a housing committee like team, and then so all the different chapters will have these teams. They'll be focused on drafting the first drafts to send to the subcommittee. So it's kind of like that, you know, hierarchical structure. So this will be the team for transportation. So we'll be the responsible parties for first draft. So as we move forward.
Could I ask a question? Could you just clarify, what is the completed streets?
Complete Streets is a planning concept. It's actually been around for a few decades now. That, like you all were talking about, a street is not just for vehicles. So it's taking in the whole scope of different modes and uses for that transportation facility, including biking, walking. Is it suitable for, you know, early morning deliveries for your downtown businesses? The full scope of what the street could be used for, and taking those all into account, rather than let's get maximum number of vehicles through it, and then we'll think about the other stuff if we have time. It's starting from a multimodal perspective.
So that would be kind of integral in saying where the best bike routes are, the recommended bike routes are, or defining bike routes through a town.
And even when looking at a road, it's like what Lindsay was saying with utilities. While we're taking a look at this road, how can we improve it for other modes? Utilities as well. So the downtown, I call that a complete street. And I think it was billed as a complete streets project.
Okay.
And from my perspective, I think it turned out great as far as slowing vehicles down, and very clear when you come into Newmarket, you're no longer on a rural highway. This is a downtown. You will stop for pedestrians, so you put in, you know, the flashing beacons that are activated by the pedestrians. Complete Streets is sort of a broad philosophy of let's consider all the other modes.
Thank you.
So yeah, if there's any other jargon, please flag me down. I try not to use acronyms. Transportation world has terrible acronyms.
Yes.
And too many. So,
Great.
Yeah, any other?
Yeah, can we, maybe like a timeline, you know, when we like to get started with like.
Good question. I don't have the dates off the top of my
I
head.
feel like later this fall, early winter, you know, we'll probably,
Yeah.
For a first draft?
you know, working towards first draft. So I think first draft realistically spring.
Yeah. So through the fall, and
Yeah.
we could have something really good on paper, I think, by January.
Yeah.
And for those of us who are not intimately familiar, what's the scope of a transportation chapter how big is it?
I think you did go over there. You want to repeat that, Colin?
sorry.
Yeah. It's mostly an update, so we would be updating the data that are in there, and that's all pretty easy, and we can kind of improve it, like with the TomTom data, like I was saying, in addition to traffic counts and so forth. And then it's, at least using Barrington's example, kind of updating the goals and objectives in that. So a goal being, just off the top of my head, improving or increasing public transportation options in the town, or focusing on origin and destinations for cycling and walking, you name it. So we'd all develop that, those sorts of goals and specific tasks. That ended up being, I think, the majority of the work in Barrington that I worked on with the subcommittee on, was crafting that language for, we updated the vision, what the downtown will look like, and areas, I keep thinking of, in the past, fairly recent past, I've talked with town staff about what's happening with 108 south of the downtown core. With development coming, now is the time to think about that, what that street design would look like, and how that might be informed by a policy. Yeah.
And would safe routes to school fall into the complete streets?
Yes. Yeah. So there will be, part of the master plan update could be developing projects to be developed. Safe Routes to School was its own program a number of years ago, and now that got merged into what's called the Transportation Alternatives Program, which is for non-motorized transportation improvements. So if you want to build a sidewalk, that's for the Transportation Alternatives Program. And I mean, plenty of points to be had in an application if it's focusing on getting kids to school on a safer route. So, yeah.
So, and also part of our master plan, we have themes. We're developing themes, and those themes are vibrancy, connectivity, accessibility, affordability, and resiliency. So, as we think of a transportation, lens, how's those definitions, how's that change, or not change, but how's that relate to the transportation as we think about developing this chapter? So I can share these definitions with you later on, but another good topic of conversation for next meeting.
Where are the themes from?
So the master plan subcommittee developed these themes through input from the community and different boards, and they came up with these 5 things. So basically, each chapter is going to have these 5, concepts or themes to achieve certain goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so again, they're vibrancy, connectivity, accessibility, affordability, and resiliency. So as each chapter is going to have those those themes, and then how the goals relate to that theme. So, and then at the back end of the master plan, there's going to be implementation chapter as well. So, again, this committee will be focused on transportation, so all the transportation goals will most likely fall to this committee and other entities as well, and we look, to implement those goals. So, but that'll be part of the chapter update, and that's all I have. Any questions on the master plan?
No.
Great. Let's talk about parking study.
Yes.
So my colleague Jackson at SRPC is our GIS pro, our mapping pro. We have a number of people that are adept at it. And we've worked with Barton Lindsay here at kind of defining the area for the parking study. On the downtown core is kind of the main focus, with a few satellite lots that are already in existence. We need to do the data collection when students are at UNH. It's looking like spring is going to be the time for data collection, after the snow melts, but before kids leave. And so the red area is what we're looking at for actually going out and counting vehicles and recording how long they're staying in one parking spot. Some of the streets back up from the main drag there don't have lined spaces, but we record how many vehicles are on that road. And when there's an actual lined space, we're recording kind of the turnover rate, number of vehicles. And then the yellow area was suggested by Bart for just what will be a pretty fairly easy analysis of future capacity. If new spaces were striped along Packers Falls Road, how many could we fit in there, depending on whether it's parallel spaces, angled, or side by side. So I think we're pretty close. I think we're there on the map, more or less, about the various spaces for the core study area, and then it's a matter of getting some volunteers to help with that data collection. The way the data collection will work is there will be any number of routes. We're doing something similar in Somersworth. There will be 3 routes to walk, usually on an hourly basis. So one person will do a route and do the data collection, and then it will be done the next hour. So repetitively, how often and how long that period of data collection, that's to be determined, and this committee can help with that. And again, that will be happening in the spring, and I'd like that, whether it's during the master plan update or will be added onto it later. I see that as part of that master planning effort. But that's a separate contract that we've done with the town. So we're doing all the behind-the-scenes legwork with the mapping and stuff, and then it's the data collection piece that's volunteer-based.
Okay. Is there, is that something that requires training, the volunteers, or is that a pretty straightforward?
Very light.
Yeah.
In Somersworth, we're doing paper forms. I'm blanking why. There was a specific reason, but we do have the ability to create an app for people to use. Paper forms are just as good, and it's going along. And we did one in Farmington a few years back, and people recorded license plates, and then recorded if it was the same person when they came back an hour later. And we don't store that information. It's just for the data purposes. It all gets disaggregated. And then so we'll get you an idea of capacity versus usage. Usually we do a morning and evening kind of thing when a lot of the parking is taken up during the week, and then a weekend day as well, to get you an idea of your visitor usage versus your resident usage. We won't know that exactly because we can't tell from the license plate. What else was I going to say? Again, we can get you an idea of the turnover rate. Like up in Farmington, there was one lot where a lot of commuters used it. So the same car was there the whole day, where they had more turnover around into downtown. Get you an idea of if you're maxing out your parking spaces and when that might happen. Make some general recommendations based on that.
Was this commissioned with like a specific problem or a goal in mind, or is this general parking?
Yeah, so there's definitely, we want to understand, one, our capacity for parking downtown.
Yeah.
Because there has been a lot of, this is like from the survey as well, I've seen like one of the biggest issues is parking. So, so there's definitely issues out in the community on parking in the downtown, at least, and or lack thereof. So we want to, get data on that and start, collecting it, and then if there are solutions, what they are, identify those solutions, and then start planning for it. So that's
And I think we can get into not just how much parking, but where as well. As Mike said, businesses care about foot traffic, not vehicle traffic. You can have 1 million cars go by your shop, but if no one walks in the door, what's the point? So parking is always people get PhDs just studying parking. And it is an eternal issue that comes up, and it is directly related to economic development. And you'll always get people, they want to park as close as they can to where they're going. But I think there's room for this committee to think about not just how much parking, but where that gets put in, so that you can get more people in your downtown without creating a safety hazard or snarling things up, and keep with the vibrancy theme that comes to mind. Yeah.
So we're assessing what we have,
Mhm.
but there's no real way to assess the opportunities lost. For example, I had a family member visiting from out of town a couple of weeks ago, and as they came into town heading to my house, they wanted to stop and get a little something to eat, and they did not, because they could not figure out where to park as they drove through town. And by the time they realized we're through town, they were through town.
That was it, yeah.
So that was an opportunity lost for, the market in town or wherever they wanted to stop. But there's no real way to assess that at this point, is there?
I would say there's no way to measure that in terms of numbers, but that's an important anecdotal thing, and it's as simple as, better signage or whatever. That feels like a cheat, but
Right.
if people, that's important data. If people don't know where they can park, we've talked about the possibility of maybe opening up a lot across the top of the garage for public parking during the day. Better advertising that. Maybe folks don't know where the little satellite lots are.
Yeah.
Making those more visible and walkable from that place, because I don't know if there are sidewalks from the satellite lots into downtown. So I think we can speak to that, measuring how many people drive through downtown and don't park because they don't know where to. That's going to be challenging, but an important thing to think about.
So we can add things like uniform signage and identifying a wayfinding system, possibly, something
Yeah.
to that effect.
That's an easy goal to put in there.
Yeah.
That is lacking, and yeah.
Great. Well, that's awesome.
And Jackson just happens to love doing parking studies. He just came to me and my boss and was like, I know this sounds weird, but I miss doing parking studies. Can we do some? So you guys at Summersworth are in the books. So, and they are kind of fun. I mean, it's data collection. You walk around, and as long as it's not bitterly cold,
Yeah.
it's just kind of a pleasant thing. So,
Great.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you very much.
that it for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we'll maybe stick around for our next item is topics for the next meeting. So I just want to fully understand, and maybe there's something we check in with you, Colin, at a later date, but just, a schedule and when you want to come back here for the master plan.
Yeah, I think that's our
Yeah.
next.
Yeah,
Our next item is to get a meeting
Yeah.
schedule set up and what the order of operations for the chapter development are.
Great,
And
yeah.
I feel like we can steal that from the Barrington effort pretty easily.
Okay.
As far as what we've accomplished and when.
Okay, great. So what I'll do for the committee is I'll give an update on that status and when we can expect Colin to come back in and we start developing that chapter. So I don't think it'll be starting next month, but we'll have more information on that and anticipated schedule. And then when we can meet, I'll meet again, talk about that. And then also volunteers, when you want volunteers, when you want to start that data collection, want to speak about that right now?
Yeah.
Maybe we can get a head start potentially.
Jackson is full up at this point for the next 2 months in terms of his workload.
Okay.
But after we get this map is more or less finalized, I think, at this point, then he has some GIS work as far as identifying where each of the spots are and making, a data layer of that.
Okay.
And then he'll design some routes and then get you an idea of how many people you will need, like the bare minimum, and what, and then we can build from there. So if we have 3 routes and you have at least 2 people per route, people get to switch off, and do 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the evening or something.
Okay. So I'll provide updates to the committee at the next meeting
Yeah.
on that. So I guess I'll leave it to the committee. What would you like to talk about the next meeting? Do you want to meet next month? Would you want to meet in a couple months?
I think we should definitely meet next month, just to get ourselves a little bit, in the saddle, people, so that we not too much time passes. And I think it was, well, I don't remember, but Lindsay brought up this idea of creating a classification system for the I'll call it roads, although I don't want to use that term because it sounds so vague. Streets. Let's call it streets for town.
Complete streets.
Yeah. But, well, so let's say the idea would be, if I understand this correctly, and you can correct me if I'm misinterpreting this, we'll have a street like, let's say Elm Street. And Elm Street is of a certain class street, which includes X, Y components. This is what makes this kind of street. Whereas North Main Street might be a different class street, or Piscassic is a different street, a different kind of street, which would reflect what kind of traffic we would expect on that street, and what makes that particular class a complete street from our perspective. We could include it in that way, I guess, so that when we come to a maintenance program, the entire streetscape would be included in the maintenance, rather than always just focusing on the vehicular traffic. I would be really interested in looking at what kind of classifications other towns, cities, municipalities have developed, so that we can see whether that is something that we would like to suggest be adopted for the town. That way you could also, I'm living on whatever Elm Court, and that's this kind of street, and this is missing here. This really ought to be here, and it gives you kind of a place to start as a resident also. And I think it would just be helpful to make sure that we have a road system that reflects the type of use that we want to encourage also. So you can find your way through town in a safe way using a bicycle, because you can map it out based on the facilities that are there, rather than just going the way you would if you were driving, because that's what you're used to doing. But that may not be the safest way or the fastest way to get there using other modes. So it would have some, I think pretty wide-ranging possibilities.
Is this based off Dutch street classifications, street, road, and? No.
It was kind of, so I brought this up as something I've seen in other communities, and I previously was working in consulting, and we would get to a project in a certain city or town, and they have, I used Lebanon as an example because I did a lot, and I'm familiar with their policy. So they have design standards for certain roads, and it was kind of, the classification I hesitate to use, just because that's kind of the standard DOT, class 4,
Yes.
class 5, and that's more based on like volume and a little bit different. But when it gets to local roadways, maybe it's like a category, that this is a neighborhood road, and it should have lane widths that are no wider than 10 feet, and it should have shoulders that are at least 3 feet, preferably 5 if we can get that. And as a designer, when you're looking at reconstructing that road, or if, I know we don't have a lot of new subdivision development opportunities, but a new subdivision coming in, then the design engineer can take a look at our standards and be able to say, okay, well, this is probably gonna be this type of road,
Yeah.
and these are the standards that go along with that, and, you know, you can get to more of a, main street or urban type of road, and you can have design standards on the lane width and bike facilities, and sidewalks need to be incorporated, or if you have curb or you don't have curb, and if that curb needs to be of a certain type, and it's all getting very specific, but the first step would be to determine for Newmarket, what are the types of roads, and what defines those, and then we could kind of put some general standards to them, and it could be a way to help us kind of more standardize those roadway reconstructions and the look and feel of the roads, and it helps for people that are on those roads too to see, you know, this is clearly a neighborhood road. I'm
Right.
not gonna go, and you can kind of sometimes infer speed limits and what you expect to see in the neighborhood or in the surrounding area too.
So you're
In other
creating
words,
a
the
pattern.
infrastructure, sorry,
No, good. Please.
the infrastructure communicates the,
Right.
Yeah.
the speed rather than relying exclusively on, you know,
It gives more
a
value.
white sign that tells you,
Yeah.
oh, now all of a sudden this is 35, even though nothing has changed, and before that I was driving 50, why is it 35 now? You know, so kind of what Colin was saying about driving into town and it being clear, this is, you have to slow down here.
Right. Oh, you know, the pattern's talking to you, the infrastructure's talking to you.
Yeah.
You know, not just a sign.
Yeah.
I think that's spot on. So
The
do,
beautiful thing about this is almost every community is fighting the same problem. Everybody's working on traffic calming, new modes of transportation, pedestrian friendly. You can read about whether it's Lebanon or Manchester, New Hampshire, everyone's working on the same thing, so we
Right.
steal ideas.
yep.
Yeah, and we could do some research to pull, and I'm sure you're aware of communities too that may have some similar like categories of roadway that they follow, and we can pull some examples to bring to the committee and discuss in a little more detail what types of roadways fit Newmarket.
So I'm not sure I completely understand. So this is, I'm going to say zoning for roads. You know, it's saying, okay, we want these roads, this is where we want these roads to be? Or are we talking about assessing the current status of the road?
I see it more as assessing the current roads to kind of categorize, and then that could kind of guide the future reconstruction or development that may happen in those areas where those roads are.
I think this is important. I think it's important well, I think one thing that a lot of places lack, and even Newmarket, is slower roads and is streets where, you know, it's you know, define that it's as much about people walking and people biking as it is, you know, like our downtown, for instance, you know, where there's people going to be coming in and out of those places all the time and crossing the road, and you know, so to prioritize that and, you know, define it as, you know, that's what this place is, you know.
And an extreme example, in this, you know, Europe is not always a good guide for, you know, the way we travel around here, but there's this concept of a play street where it's a regular roadway, but it's explicitly a street where you should expect children to be playing in the street. So, and you know that as you're going in, this is, you know, the speed limit is really low. Maybe the design of the street is a little bit different. Maybe not something that we will see in Newmarket anytime soon. But that's kind of an extreme of that. Or, you know, maybe curbs are not a good idea on the street because it's so narrow. Maybe it's better to de-emphasize separation and, you know, just have everybody use the same road surface. Just, it needs to be clear that this is for everyone, not just for not just for cars or trucks or what have you. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in that, in making sure that we are communicating, using infrastructure to communicate what we wanted to communicate, to ensure that we have safe roadways.
I think it's very important, this concept of play streets, just not that, the idea that the children are expected to be, you are expected as a operator of a vehicle to see children.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what, one thing that everybody has touched on is when you come into downtown Newmarket, the flashing pedestrian signs make it clear that you are expected as a operator of a vehicle to see and look for pedestrians. They are expected to be around and they are part of the world here.
Right, the onus is on the operator
Yes.
of the driver of the vehicle.
So I think that there are places in town where that's an important thing to convey, that there are pedestrians around, and maybe not just on through the main street, other places in town where there are pedestrians that may be crossing the street, may be walking on the roadway, and drivers need to know that they need to look out for them. The other part of that too is places in town where there's not sidewalks and we do see pedestrians. And I don't know if this falls into this or not, but it seems like pedestrians sometimes don't take on their responsibility to be seen by vehicles and to act responsibly, to act in predictable ways. Bicyclists as well. I think there's a responsibility of bicyclists and pedestrians to act lawfully, but to also act in a very predictable way. So I'm not, in other words, we're coming, just let's take Main Street as an example. You're coming through Main Street and you are looking at these flashing and non-flashing pedestrian signs. You are not expecting, in those circumstances, with the number of crosswalks we have, to see a pedestrian come out in a non-crosswalk, just anywhere in the street. And I think the pedestrians have a responsibility to act. I guess that's the only way I can say it, is act in a predictable way. And maybe that's a public education issue.
Right, which I think this committee could take on, developing that outreach, in a way, we can discuss what that looks like, but, I think that's important. Definitely true. Colin, I do want to, yeah.
Can I
Yes.
throw something up on the board that might be relevant?
Yeah, sure.
We did,
Let's go back, yeah, there you go.
this is 2019, so it feels like ancient history. We did an assessment of all roads in our region, and I think most of the state, for, that's not what I wanted, stand by. Not that, for bicycle level of traffic stress, which is a model for assessing roads. We get a little tour of our website here. It is an imperfect but helpful way of looking at roads, kind of what Lindsay was talking about and what you all have started talking about, from a bicycle perspective and what roads are stressful. So level 1 being a neighborhood road, where it might be more like a play street, where the assumption is that there are kids playing, or a completely isolated multi-use path where vehicles are not allowed. Level 1. Level 5 is like this Spalding Turnpike where cars or bicycles are not allowed. Level 4 is like you're only comfortable if you're wearing aerodynamic clothing and your hair is on fire on a carbon bike. So again, as I said, imperfect system, but a way of, we looked at as many parameters as we could. Number of, let me actually just, what was I looking for?
Sprite Bay Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's something to look at. It's certainly not perfect, but we looked at the width of the road in feet, number of lanes, lane width, whether there was a shoulder was present, so in downtown, not so much. The average annual daily traffic, 11,000, two-way road, whether there were bike lanes, parking, yes. And all of these parameters, we got down to whether it was a posted speed limit, and it gave a score. So in this case, 108 just after the bridge, where to go, I think was level 3, LTS level 3.
Is that a standard that you developed, or is it a common standard used?
Commonly used. So it's been used before. We worked with Plymouth State University. They developed the computer model. We plugged in all the data and it spat it back out. So plenty of ground truthing to do locally. We got some good input at farmers markets and stuff back in the day. But something to think about for what you all are talking about, which I love that idea of zoning for roads is kind of an interesting concept. Where I see the benefit is identifying these isolated islands of green, which is the level 1, like neighborhood streets that are cut off by a street where ideally, when my kid gets a little older, he'd be able to ride his bike across to a different neighborhood to visit his friend on a street that is not today friendly. When I walk to the park with him in the stroller, I say, okay, it's time to play the game. How many cars go by before one stops? So a way of looking at your streets in a classification system.
Yeah, could we work with you to make that more accurate?
Yeah, I mean, we can
Yeah,
update the
update
data
it,
in
yes, and then maybe add more
Manually.
streets too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so say for instance, hypothetically, we do the same process as you do from a ground truthing perspective,
Yeah.
and give that to you. You can update your,
Yep.
Yeah.
This is
I think that'd be
database
super
that we
useful
updated.
for us to really identify those green areas to connect or turn yellow into green.
Yeah.
And I like that idea. I think it feeds into a complete streets or a road design policy, whatever
Yeah.
you call it, whether it's complete streets policy. It's like, when we're looking at this road, can we narrow it? Can we add curbs? Can we add like a grassy buffer that separates the cars from the people? What can we do when we're looking at a road?
And I think it would be also interesting if we superimpose that to off-trail data as well, so where those trail networks are, and then you can see those connectivities.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now you can create a really good picture for
Yeah.
people. This is where you can go off-road, on-road to, travel across Newmarket.
Yep.
So filling in those gaps.
Yep.
And we still have access to Strava data
Yeah.
through NHDOT.
Great.
So it's an app for recreational riders. You hit start, do your route, hit stop, and there's a heat map then I guarantee you most of these roads will show up, and including off-road places. So if there are places in Newmarket where folks are riding mountain bikes, those show up pretty bright throughout New Hampshire.
Cool.
Excellent.
I was in Dover a couple weeks ago, and we went on I'm new to the area, so I don't even really know where I was, but we went on a rail trail.
The
path, I
community
think.
trail?
And when we got to the end of it, we were near the downtown, and it was wonderful. There was a sign there. We weren't sure where we were, but there was a sign there that said, this way to go there, this way to go there, as you came off, and it told you where you could catch a bus.
Yeah. I don't think you must have been the community trail that they've been working on that for a long time. It's gorgeous. You can walk, this isn't great for viewing, but you can walk from here along the Cochico, no.
As we're
Up here.
Liberty, yeah, that's,
This green line actually is the community trail.
Watson.
This is pedestrian only. There's the Cochico, Watson Dam.
Yep.
All the way
Yes.
down here through downtown. There's a bridge over, down along 108, and they're working on a connection. I've lost where I am geographically, but you walk through downtown through the schools, there's a disc golf course near the Bellamy River. You'll be able to get all the way out to 155. So it goes all the way down here, kind of does a loop like this, and there's all this housing over here. And hopefully not too far from now, you will be able to walk from downtown to the forthcoming General Sullivan Bridge on foot. On that, as they're working on a trail that will parallel
Bellamy River.
the
Yeah.
the turnpike right
Yeah.
through here. It's a little tight, but it'll be good for walking it.
They just resurfaced that road,
A
didn't
mountain
they?
bike, yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So,
So,
getting off a
so how do
tangent.
we turn this into an agenda item?
Yes.
That we can actually manage?
Sure. Well, I wrote down,
Minutes later.
so we talked about collecting those policies, right?
Samples for
Yeah.
road categories.
Yes.
Yeah,
So we can
start
we can
there.
start with that and cleaning.
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's good.
okay.
Do we want to have goals for our committee?
Oh, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great idea. Goal setting?
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder to what degree, since we're updating the master plan chapter, to what degree some of those goals will be coming out of that
Oh,
process.
I had a thought. Colin.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
got a lot to talk about. I can-
Demonstration projects.
Yes.
How can we utilize the planning commission to do that?
So, the other, oops, is it still up here? Where's where are the PDFs? Do I just have to open it again?
Yeah, just go tap on it.
So I mentioned we hired VHB a couple of cycles ago to look at the 108 and 152 project. They did a bunch of analysis. I will make sure to send this and some other attachments
Yeah.
to you all through Bart. We got a cost estimate, did a bunch of traffic data, gonna get down to the exciting part in a sec. Come on. Whoa, okay, that works. For the 152 and 108 intersection, because I've heard from many folks in town about the safety issue there. Remind me the gentleman who runs Johnny Boston's.
John.
Yep. Who's running for in elections and everything. About he just has a front row view to all that could go bad there. Thankfully, no one has died, but it's a doozy. So I started big and said, what if we closed that road? And we sort of worked from there, and this is what DOT and town staff, we kind of came up with to close not the whole street, but just this eastbound side.
To make it one way.
To make it one way. So you'd still have westbound traffic, that would divert folks that want to go this way, coming from 152 down to Jerry Ave, which require probably signalization here. It's not a silver bullet, but something to deal with the problem here. I envisioned this, let's, start with the nuclear option, was that could be just like street side dining and no cars, only people. So worked it back from there with more level-headed ideas. So this would be a hell of a change. And so what I talked to Bart and Lindsay about is something called a demonstration project, where this would be a huge investment for the town, and you want to vet it with the people that are going to be driving it every day. So you can get rubber curbs, jersey barrier, paint, AstroTurf, and demonstrate what it'll look like, advertise the bejesus out of it so everyone knows it's coming, and then see what the traffic pattern looks like, and whether it actually works.
Good question. Do you have to get a temporary signal?
Good question. So,
At Jerry Ave, we probably would.
Yeah.
If we were going
That's
to do
what-
one way. yeah.
That's what I was wondering, like, we would have to get that temporary
So,
signal
well, it
there.
is signalized, it's everywhere right now to flash,
Right, so we'd have to,
but it can
It can go-
train, or when the fire department activates it, it goes to a signal.
it does go to a proper signal.
Yeah.
So
But
radio.
it's just flashing yellow and red. It's not.
Right,
it's not
there's
a
no-
full
I don't think
signal.
it's a green ball, I don't think.
Right, we'd have to get something
Well,
temporary.
Yeah, They come on stands. I think
Right.
they're using one up in Durham right now.
Yeah.
There's one in Dover.
There's one in Dover.
Yeah,
there's one in
that's
Dover.
right.
There are companies that will put together, they have packages of materials.
And you use them in construction a lot too.
Oh, yeah.
Temporary
Right,
signatures.
that's true.
Yeah.
So this would be a big demonstration project. Dover has done a couple of smaller ones. They did one, I'm gonna blank on the name of the street, but they wanted to look at narrowing it because it's straight and flat, it's a drag strip. And Portsmouth just got done with one, their Bartlett Street neighborhood. If you headed down there, they had a mini roundabout out for like a year, and they tested out some other things. They put a camera up and watched how people navigated the roundabout. All the residents said, we want a mini roundabout in our neighborhood. At the end of it, they said, hate the mini roundabout. So they didn't have to buy and install a real roundabout to find out that people hated it. So that's kind of the gist. You get inexpensive stuff, test it out, publicize it, and then see how it works without making that investment. So that was something I thought the committee could kind of sink their teeth into individual elements of this with some temporary things. Get some folks from Portsmouth. Keene did a big one in their downtown Main Street. Get them out here and workshop it. Learn from people who have done it before. I hosted a peer exchange thing with town planners, DPW folks, because, something like, the curb bump outs, it's really nice to use the plow truck in a nice straight line. It's another to do curbs and stuff, so we wanted to get some input from people who have installed things like pedestrian bump outs, and how that really works in a winter maintenance.
What we did in our downtown was we had flush bump outs.
Right, yep.
So
The
they
bricks.
are, whatever lined with granite and brick, but the plowing can still go straight.
Yeah. So,
And I've worked in a few communities, 3 communities that have done temporary road closures just to test an idea.
mhm.
And quite often in Dover, they just built these huge planters that you had to use a forklift to move them. And they put it around the post office and they close the road and they let it run for a year, see how it goes, and then decide. And they decide to close the road.
Yeah.
But they had it so they could easily remove it in case it was a failure.
And the pandemic kind of gave us a little unforeseen test of this. Like, Rochester closed off one of their parking lanes and made it street side dining. Portsmouth has made that all but permanent in a bunch of locations with, Jersey barrier that they had the school kids paint and put planters on them and made them look real nice. So this idea of a demonstration project, I thought was something that
So on that note, this is a great start. So there's other projects you can think of. I think that might be a good idea. And also I'd like to reach out to the public watching this. Is there any concerns you have you want to bring to this committee on, transportation-wise? Please let us know. You can email me or Lindsay or come to the meeting. That'd be great. But I think, understanding, people's experience with our networks is super important and will bring opportunities for us to really tackle this issue.
And it
Would
just,
we want to create, one, could we put it in the newsletter, but 2, would we want to create an email address or a way of residents could identify issues or concerns
Yeah.
and not have it all go to your email, which
Sure.
could flood you?
There is a program for that, See Click Fix, but
See
that
Click
costs
Fix.
money. But
Well, that cost the community money?
yeah, it's a program that you have to pay for. So
Okay.
so it's something we have to have a larger conversation on, but it might be a great tool for that. However, for right now, one, we can create I think we have the capability of creating a transportation committee email. If not, then I'm fine taking on emails. We'll spare Lindsay.
Well,
Yeah, or
I wouldn't
Lindsay,
mind
yeah.
either. We did
Yeah.
something similar when we did the traffic calming, the pavement striping.
Mhm.
And when we did the post to explain that that's what we were doing, and that was on the webpage, and I think also shared on Facebook, I received at least half a dozen calls or emails with suggestions of places to take a look at. So
Yeah.
I don't mind
Mhm.
if we want to put something out as the committee and list one or both of our contacts so that people can submit that information.
I think it's a good idea. I really think that, I mean, we're 5 voices in
Right.
town, or 6 voices in town.
Exactly.
A bunch of other voices.
I think it makes sense to have a committee email anyways.
Okay.
Just easy, and then we can just distribute that.
It could be automatically distributed.
Yeah.
Yep, so let's do that. So I think it's just a good opportunity for us to, kind of brainstorm and hear from the community, so, awesome. And hopefully we won't drive you crazy, Colin. All right, so we got, so Lindsay and I will do some research, about, road classification or road categorization.
Yeah.
Whatever we're gonna call it, and then I think that's just our major thing, and then maybe,
And master plan.
a master plan, so kind of give an update on that, where we, anticipate a timeline for master plan. So Colin, I guess on the master plan, is there anything we can do right now for you? If, as we get to, start time, with you?
I can't think of anything. I think I've read through the master plan chapter a few times and gotten an idea of where the updates would be. So,
We're open to suggestions too. so.
yeah, some of it's cut and dry, like just updating traffic data. And like I said, I think it's going to be goal statements, policy statements, and things like that that are going to be the greatest workload as far as back and forth. So there may be, I might put together a kind of a pre-menu of some of those updates and where data is just an update, and then I can provide, I'm happy to maybe even just show some of the materials we put together for Barrington. Some of the goal statements may apply. Just sort of show.
Yeah,
I don't need anything from the committee or you all at this
I
point.
think right now what we can do is talk about the themes and what that means for transportation. Something we can do, I think, internally right now as we go through that.
The themes you mentioned, that's
Yeah.
just helpful in itself
Yeah.
to keep me grounded and
Right.
do all the thinking.
So I think kind of, those are kind of general for the whole chapter, so we just gotta maybe figure out what's the meaning for transportation.
Yeah.
So that might be a good discussion point.
Sure.
It'll be useful, and it gives us, we're, we'll be more proactive as we go into chapter development. We'll really have an understanding of the lenses we're looking through. So at that point.
Yeah, I think it's, at this point, it's me proposing an order of operations and
Yeah.
you making sure that it doesn't seem crazy or I'm missing something as far as what gets developed along the way. Timeline.
Great. And in the interim, between meetings, if there's anything else you want to add to it, if something, you get inspired, something comes up you want to talk about, we'll have a little item on the agenda for committee discussion, general discussion. So, all right. That sound good?
Yeah, I think so. I think we just want to be careful that considering how much conversation there is, that we don't overload ourselves, so that we maybe keep it to one conversation item and otherwise just share, because we want to feel productive and not just spin our heads.
So, I agree with that. I think that's a good idea. So how about we just talk about road classification?
Well, we still want to have the master plan chapter
Right.
scheduled discussion.
Yeah, scheduled discussion. I'm not sure how far you want to get into that, like talking about themes or whatnot. So do you,
Well, I think I would prefer that we stick to the master plan as a conversation item and otherwise have information sharing, and then we can see what comes out of that and how it flows into the master plan, because I think that's basically what we should be focusing on right now, because it's ongoing and it's active, and I think other conversation items will flow into it.
great. Sounds good to me.
Okay.
In the meantime, is that sidewalk study something you can forward to us? Or is it
Yeah?
take a moment?
No, I have a PDF. I was trying to think, it might even actually be on the website, I'm not sure, but Yeah, I can forward the road management one and the sidewalk one.
That'd be great.
Would it be possible to add that to the transportation?
I was just gonna,
Oh,
so,
committee webpage, yeah.
so I was thinking, resources to
everybody
add to
can-
the webpage. I was just thinking about that, what we want to add there, what we want to advertise and share. I think that'd be a good conversation.
If it's an existing study that's already elsewhere on the website, that,
Yeah, if it's not, because some of that stuff's in DPW highway, so I don't know. But regardless, we'll share it with the committee, and then we'll see where it makes sense to post it in the file.
okay.
Adjournment?
Yes. We'll take a motion to adjourn?
Oh,
One last tiny thing.
Okay.
On the public transportation side, you all have Route 7 on demand. Just wanted to make sure you know, Coast just came out with a video about Route 7 on demand, just kind of promoting it and making sure people know how to use it. It's like a 2-minute video that was like 2 weeks old. I think it's on the Exeter website, so I'll send a link to you all. I think if you just Route 7 on demand, Coast, Google it, it's like the top 3 result. It's on YouTube and stuff.
That'd be
so-
great on our website, our
Yeah.
town website, and maybe even on our community access coalition.
Easy to promote.
Yeah.
Thank you, Colin.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Motion to adjourn?
Seriously.
so moved. Second,
Yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.